Hi, my name is Andrea Serrard. I am a Kennesaw State University student. I am getting my master's degree in instructional technology with an endorsement in teacher leadership. Here is my video for the capstone project I completed throughout the master's program. The title of my capstone project is Student Achievement in Middle School Science Using Project-Based Learning. The problem that I'm trying to address with my capstone project is raising Georgia milestone scores for students with disability and English language learners at Mill Creek Middle School. After talking to the other 8th grade teachers, they teach the students on a level 1 of the depth of knowledge. The Georgia Milestones test is a DOK level 2 and 3. If the teachers taught and tested on a DOK level 2 and 3 while using project-based learning, they would meet the needs of not only students with disabilities and English language learners, but all students. Using project-based learning as your guide to teaching, all students would succeed on the Georgia Milestones and classroom assessments. What is project-based learning? It is just like it sounds. The teacher will give the students a real-world problem and question in order to answer based on their teaching standards. The project can take anywhere from a week to a semester to complete. Project-based learning is different than just giving students a project to complete. This project is what drives and teaches the standards to the students. The teacher does not just stand up in the front of the classroom and lecture. They facilitate and answer students' questions. When a teacher gives students a project-based learning assignment, the project requires critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and problem solving. According to McKell and Parker, the ability to identify, explain, and apply concepts is critical in designing, delivering, and assessing instruction. Teachers must switch their roles from a directive to a more facilitative role with project-based learning, meaning that teachers go from people who sets all the expectations and guidelines to a facilitative role in guiding students to become drivers of their own learning outcomes. Teachers switching roles is very hard for most of them because teachers like to be the directors of their classroom versus facilitating their classroom. When I was teaching 6th grade math, I did project-based learning with a flipped classroom, and my milestone scores were the 2nd highest in the school and the 3rd highest in the county. After receiving this information about my scores, project-based learning was how I wanted to teach until research showed better teaching methods. I am currently teaching 8th grade science in order to raise Georgia milestone scores across the board, and to get the other 8th grade science teachers on board with project-based learning as well. Having the students learn based on project-based learning, the students are more engaged in the content and retain the information better. Project-based learning takes a lot of time on the front end for the teachers to research, prepare, and model the real-life activities they want students to develop. After taking the time on the front end, the middle and back become easier. The middle and back end is when you plan, research, and prepare for the next unit so that you can get ahead. Once you get ahead of the lessons, it will not seem like a daunting task every single time. For how much planning, researching, and preparing project-based learning takes, these are the reasons why teachers do not implement it into their classrooms. Since teachers have very little time to plan, most want to do what's easy. The best teachers are the teachers that will do project-based learning in their classroom instead of the easy DOK 1 level activities. The capstone project plan began in December of 2019. When I started the capstone project, I had to start a few months back before implementing the project because I had to make sure that I had researched and understood everything about project-based learning. Then in January 2020, I emailed the parents about a real-world project that we will be doing in class, and also to let them know that students would need materials in order to build the egg car. We started our capstone project by the end of January and into the beginning of February 2020. As the students were researching, planning, and gathering information about the project-based learning assignment, they had other activities to complete as well. In February and the beginning of March, the students did a tic-tac-toe assignment, Newton's Laws Nearpod, Stations Labs over Forces in Motion, and a Bill Nye video worksheet while working on their real-world project throughout the entire unit. Then by the end of March, the students should have built, tested, and completed all of the Force in Motion unit assignments. The evaluation plan of my capstone is to increase student achievement on the 8th grade Science Georgia Milestones test. First, I evaluated the success of my project by using students' data from the previous milestone scores. Then I was able to walk around and see each student's cars while they were building it. While looking at their ed car, I would explain why they did certain things or added certain items to their vehicle. After talking with the students about their ed cars, I watched them test it as the ed car ran a meter and down a ramp into a brick wall. If the vehicle does not make it past the meter, the students will have time to try and fix the problem and test it again. Once the car runs the meter, the vehicle will run down the ramp into a brick wall to see if the egg survives the crash. Seeing each student's cars and the success of the car will tell me if they understood Newton's laws and how it pertains to the real world. Project-based learning will be measured based on if the ed car ran a meter and survived the crash. The students will also be graded based on a rubric. The final way the students were evaluated was by a standards-based unit test. The data from the trial could help improve my professional practice to see if the students understood the content and to see if project-based learning does work. If the students did not do well on the data gathered, I would have to reevaluate the different assignments given to see where I went wrong and why the students did not understand. Gathering data also shows teachers what part of the standard are students grasping and not grasping. My capstone project was project-based learning in science. I took project-based learning into the science classroom because I had my students create a real-world situation by researching, planning, and creating. The students' real-world project was to build an egg car out of household materials, and the car had to run a meter and run down a ramp into a brick wall. The vehicle also had an egg inside. This egg was their passenger. The egg car also had to have at least one safety feature. The students love doing hands-on activities, and anytime I tell them that we are going to build something, they are all engaged and ready to listen. As each student is researching and building their car, they also had to answer questions based on real-world situations and how they would fix it. Building the cars, answering the questions, and testing the vehicles took the students 5 class days to complete. I had 90% of my students pass the meter run, and the egg survived the crash. As the students built, researched, and planned for their ed cars, they are doing other assignments to reinforce their understanding of force and motion. Building ed cars is just one of the many project-based learning activities that we do in 8th grade science in order to help students achieve and understand the content. Anytime we do project-based learning in class, the students are always engaged and their grades are always better. The classroom management piece of the project-based learning is easy because all the students are involved, so they do not have any time to act up. When the students took the unit test over force and motion, I saw a 50% increase in last year's assessment scores. Project-based learning is a way that every teacher should teach. When I first learned about project-based learning, I hesitated to teach this way because my mom was a teacher growing up, and I've always seen her lecture at the front of the classroom. Then the students would work on practice problems individually or with a partner. There were times when I would see the students working on projects, but my mom still stood up in the front of the room to lecture before letting the students start on the project. Since this was the way I grew up learning that this is the way teachers taught, then that is how I was taught, and I needed to teach as well. I also felt like I was not teaching my students anything. I didn't like just letting them go, and we stood back as teachers, and in my head, I am saying, what if they don't understand the information and are not successful on the assessments? It will be my fault because I did not stand up in front of the classroom and teach them the content. As I continued with the project-based learning model, I was able to let go, and I felt better about just letting them learn for themselves. Then once the students took the assessment over force and motion, I saw how they did, and they did very well. I was shocked and a believer in project-based learning. Not only was I hesitant about project-based learning, but the students were as well. As the students go through school, they are given the information and answers, so they only have to remember the answers to regurgitate them onto a test. Students do not learn how to think critically. The first project-based learning is always a struggle and a frustration for my students. Still, the more project-based learning assignments we do, the better the students become at critically thinking for themselves. By the end of the school year, the students genuinely enjoy project-based learning, and they talk about how they do not like going to other classes because they do not teach on project-based learning. After completing my capstone and seeing the success and engagement from my students, this will be the way I teach from now on until another way of teaching that is researched to be better than project-based learning. Project-based learning is the way that every teacher should teach. Who wouldn't want their students to achieve and be successful in their content?